I'm all in a bit of a flap today. This isn't good. So what we've done is we have mixed a good portion of white paint. We have added a tiny spot of blue, and we have added a tiny spot of black, and that's given us this nice kind of steel grey colour. So generous portion of white, add some water as well. Sorry, hang on a second, let me read that message. Yeah, I'm going to send the recording out to everyone after the session. So yeah, you can paint along with the recording if you would rather. And I'm going to get this to a kind of smooth yogurty consistency. And we are going to paint basically the top kind of 3/4 of our painting in this grey, but we want this curve here. So I'm going to start off by doing the curve like this. And then I'm not going to add any more paint to my brush. I'm then just going to paint right the way up to the top of my canvas, because we don't need loads and loads of paint, because like I said, we'll still be here on Tuesday waiting for it to dry. So you'd be surprised how far you can actually get with just one brush full of paint. The other thing is, this is just a sky. There's going to be lots of stuff over the top of it, so it doesn't matter if it's not perfectly flat. Okay, so got my sky in, got it looking quite good. And when I've done that, I'm just going to give my brush a good wipe out. So use a bit of tissue. This is a really good habit to get into, because it means that you don't have to keep changing your paint water all the time. So, and then you can give it a wash. And that's all good. So what I like to say to everyone is give me a thumbs up when you've done that, so that I know you're ready to move on. And there is a reason why we've gone with a bit of a bluey grey for our sky. And that is because when you're painting, things that are colder, so blue colours, things like that, they look like they're further away. And so what we do is, by using a cold bluey grey in the background, we will create a bit of depth to our picture. So we've got this warm orangey colours down the front that are coming forward towards us, and we've got our bluey grey sky that is moving away from us and creating some depth. So any kind of picture that you're doing like that, it works really well. I've used a really big brush to do that. That's why I'm able to do it so quickly. So it's always a good idea to use the biggest brush that you've got for any kind of large areas. Oh, Demi, you were quick. Wow. Oh, Kieran, awesome. What a beautiful colour, Ruby. Really well done. That's fantastic. I can see some really beautiful sort of bluey grey shades going on. Really nice. So I'll give it a couple more minutes and then, oh, Ellie, lovely. Awesome, that's going really well. Good job. Oh, fantastic. I'm going to call you two not Emily. That's all right. So yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Fantastic, guys. Really lovely shades of blue you are all using. So those of you who are still doing your sky, you guys carry on. I'm not rushing you. I'm just going to tell you guys all what the next step is so that the ones that are ready can start, and I'll come back and recap anyway. So we're now going to put in our, I suppose it's our Haunted Houses garden. So I'm not seeing very many bright orange gardens, but I think it's kind of cool. So it's a good Halloweeny kind of colour. So what we're going to do is mix up 2 shades of orange for the lower part. We're going to have a really bright, kind of bright, vivid orange. And then we're going to have this colour, and this colour is called more of a tangerine. So it's lighter and a bit more yellowy than the one up here. So I'm going to mix up 2 shades of orange. So carry on painting your sky if you're doing that. And if you're ready to start mixing your orange, we'll do that. And don't panic, I will come back and recap everything. So for our 2 shades of orange, we're going to need some red, some yellow, and we're going to need some white again. So just like before, there's different proportions of the colours that you need to mix. So I'm going to give myself a good squeeze of yellow. Yellow's a bit of a funny colour. It can be a bit grumpy and it doesn't like other colours. So if you mix some red with it, the red will quickly overwhelm it. If you try and paint it over another colour, the other colour will show through. So yeah, it can be a bit of a grump really. I've got some orange, some red. So red and yellow makes orange. And I'm also going to mix up some white. So those are my 3 colours that I'm going to use here. I don't need masses of the white, just a bit of it. And I'm going to then divide that into 2 colours. I'm going to make my bright vivid orange and my sort of tangerine colour. Yeah, awesome. That's a good colour, Ruby. So have a look at the big area that you've got to cover and make sure that you've got enough paint for it. So there's no point in just making a small amount of the paint because then you'll run out before you finish it. So for those of you who were concentrating and didn't hear what I said, I'm just going to recap this. So I've got yellow, red and white, and I'm going to make 2 shades of orange. So I'm going to make my first one using my yellow. So I'm going to give myself a good portion of my yellow colour over on the other side of my palette. I'm going to take a lot less of the red and add that, and you'll see really quickly that that red just totally overwhelms that yellow and tries to make it red. So yellow's not terribly strong, but you get a nice colour with a small amount of red. And then what I'm going to do is take a part of that orange that I've just mixed, move it to another section on my palette, and that one I'm going to add the rest of the yellow and some of the white. I'm going to mix those together, and that will make my lovely pale tangerine colour. Once you've got that, you might need to add a bit more of your orange, you might need to add a bit more of your yellow. It'll all depend on how much of each colour you've picked up. So there we go, I've added a little bit more orange to mine. But you need 2 very different shades between the orange and the tangerine. So right, I've got my tangerine, I'm happy with that. And now I'm going to go back to looking at my orange colour, and I'm going to add what I've got left of my red and my yellow and start to make that a bit stronger. So it's good to make that middle colour first of all. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. And then kind of once you've got a colour in the middle, you can change your 2 colours and get it to where you want. So that's it, I'm happy with that now. So I've got like a much more of a pumpkin-y colour and a tangerine-y colour. 2 very different shades of orange, and that's what you want. Okay, I'm going to give this brush a wipe out, and I'm going to go back to my big brush. So does anyone need me to go over that again and explain what is needed? Oh, we all okay? Yeah, any of you who are still doing your sky, don't worry, I will explain that all again when you come to do it. Just give me a little message and I will go over it all for you again. So using my big brush, I'm going to wet it again, and I'm going to start off with my paler colour down here, and I'm going to basically almost like as if it was a rainbow, I'm going to give myself a bit of a guide there, and I'm going to fill that all in with my paint. So again, just like with the sky, you don't want to totally drown your canvas. You want it to kind of just have enough paint to cover it like that. I'm not going to wash my brush out for this next step. I'm going to leave it how it is, and I'm going to take a little bit of my darker orange. I'm going to add it to my lighter orange, and that will give me a little shade darker. And then I'm going to just brush that along where the edge of my paler one is. So I am going to be almost creating like a rainbow. And I'm going to keep doing that. So take a little bit of my darker orange, add it to my lighter one, and then do my next shade. And again, darker orange into my lighter one. And you can see with each time we do this, we're getting slightly darker until we get to the kind of point where we're like, right, we're getting near the top. So now we're just going to switch and use the darker orange. So we've created this kind of rainbow of different shades of orange. And I'm going to go up to my grey colour. So you might find that your grey shows through a little bit, but don't worry about that because we're going to do a little bit of tweaking up there and a bit more work in a second. So once you've got your bands of colour, grab another tissue, give your brush a wipe out, but don't wash it. Okay? And you have to do this bit while your paint's still wet. So clean out your brush, and where the colours meet, you're just going to rub over, wipe out your brush again. You're going to rub over the join, wipe out your brush again. And you'll see you start to get this lovely kind of graduation between all the colours, and it's all sort of soft and colours start to blend into each other. So the important thing there is to remember to give your brush a wipe out between each one of the different shades. Does anybody need me to recap any of that? No, we're all good? Cool, I will wait, and if you guys want to let me know again when you're ready to move on to the next step. Oh, looks awesome. Lovely colours. Excellent job. I like it when you guys show me how you're getting on. Fantastic. Beautiful blending. Awesome. I was going to say, I can't normally see your pencil ones, but yeah, that looks really good. Good job. Are you going to colour it in? Yeah? Fantastic. I'm feeling for you, Eve, with your small brush. I do like your gloves though. Oh, lovely blending. Fantastic. Good job, Ellie. Right, so give me a thumbs up if you're done, so I know you're ready. Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. So, oh, great, guys. Looking really good. So we obviously need to let that dry off a bit. So we're going to go back up here and do a bit of work. So if your sky hasn't totally dried for this next bit, it is not the end of the world, because we're going to paint our moon in next. And actually, the moon, if you look at it in real life, when you see photos, it's always kind of just like a solid white blob. But when you look at it in real life, you'll see that there's lots of shadows and craters and texture on it. And a good way to create that is by painting white over the top of another color, and you get the texture showing through, or using it, sort of blending it in with what's underneath. So depending on how confident you feel painting a circle, you might want to draw round something round with a pencil. Or if you just want to go for it, you can go for it. If you don't want to do a whole moon and you want to do a crescent moon, you can do that. These are your paintings, so you can adapt them to however you fancy. I'm going to grab myself a nice clean brush and some white paint. And I'm not going to add any water to the paint this time because I want it to be a bit thick and gloopy, and I don't want it to go flat. And what I'm going to do, so if you imagine that the center is here of our picture, we're going to go over to the left hand side, kind of up, not right up towards the top, but a bit higher. And what I have discovered is if I just for a moment do this, turn my painting over, you can see now where I'm painting. So unfortunately, I spent lots of money getting a new webcam and new lighting, and it's just too sensitive and it causes this issue. So I'm gonna paint my moon in. I'm not worried about getting sharp edges or anything like that. Another technique in painting for creating depth is to have soft edges around things. So, and then when I paint over this with my thick paint, what happens is it goes all uneven and all patchy. And I'm going to leave that, and as it dries, it's going to become even more uneven and patchy and start to look like the pattern and the texture that you get on the moon. So what's more important with this than getting sharp edges is getting a good circle shape. So I've not used loads and loads of paint on there. I've just used one brush full of paint and that was a dip, not a scoop. And I've just done the whole of my moon with the one thing. So I've got little bits of the grey showing through and things like that. And that will create a nice moody kind of a moon. Fantastic. Excellent job. I can't see where your moon is, Lana, but the sun, because the light's behind. Oh, I can see it now because the light was behind the canvas and shining through. I couldn't see where the white was. But yeah, excellent job. Eve, you might find it a little bit easier if you add a bit more water to your paint. You might find that it sort of spreads a little bit easier. Not masses, just a little bit. So, looking very good. Looking very good, guys. Wow, excellent. That looks like a very steep hill. I would not be wanting to climb up there. If I was all in my like posh party clothes and my heels, I would not be wanting to climb up that hill. Okay, so give me a thumbs up again when you're done and ready to move on. Awesome. Yeah, fantastic. So I'm going to switch this big background and my moon is probably going to disappear again. Almost disappeared. So next thing we're going to do is put in these bushes in the background. So we're going to go back to, if you've got any of your grey colour left, we're going to use that. If you haven't, it's not the end of the world. You can just mix up a little bit more. We want this to be darker than our sky colour. And we're going to use a technique called dry brushing for this as well. So that's where you paint with a really tiny amount of paint and it creates a really soft edge. So what you want to do for dry brushing is, so I'm not expecting you guys to have loads of brushes, loads of different ones, but if you have, this is really helpful. So there's different shapes of brushes, but also different types of bristles. And to get the best effect when you dry brush, you use ones that have got stiff bristles. If you don't have one of those, don't worry about it, it doesn't matter. We can still do it with a normal soft one, but it was just if you did happen to have what's called a hog's hair, which is a stiff one with a lot of spring rather than a sort of soft floppy one, you can use that for this. So what we want to do is use a grey colour that is darker than our sky, but not as dark as our black house is going to be. So I've still got some of my sky colour left over. I'm going to add some black to it. So remember, we don't want to go too dark because then we won't be able to see our house when we paint that on in a bit. And I'm just going to mix up my darker bush colour even, trees and bushes. And once I've got the colour that I want, I'm going to scrape all the extra paint off. It is really hard to paint with like masses and masses of paint. I'm going to go along the edge of my hill like this. So if you had a bit of a wobbly edge or anything like that, you can cover that over now, or if the sky colour was showing through. So I'm gonna go like that. And then I'm not going to add any more paint to my brush. I'm going to start to put in the edges for some of my trees that go in the background. And then I'm going to start to just go like this, do circles with my brush. And when I start to run out of paint, then I'm going to go up and go along the edges. And you can see I'm just splodging and dabbing my brush. I'm kind of banging it on the canvas. And I'm getting this really kind of scruffy effect. And this is a really good way of putting in things like trees in the background. And then you can go back to your grey and you can just fill in all the rest of it. So it's just the edges that we want to have that sort of scruffy bit, and the rest of it is just going to be all kind of flat. So the technique that we used with hardly any paint left on our brush is called dry brushing. And it's a technique that lots of famous artists use to get soft edges on things. So you can see I've kind of gone up and down between the bushes. You can do some that kind of go over the moon as well. That always looks really good and helps to create a bit of depth to your painting. So you can do ones that are sort of tall and thin and look a bit more like trees. It's just giving a bit of background to your painting. The key to that is really about having hardly any paint on your brush. So give me another thumbs up when you've done that. Cool. Fantastic. So I'm going to keep a little bit of that grey back because we're going to need it for doing our path and our tombstones, but I need to give my brush a clean. So I'm going to give that a wipe out. Oh, fantastic. And put it in the water and give it a good wash. So I've got a question for you guys for the next step, and this will all depend on what you answer as to which bit we paint next. So my question is your orange dry? So give me a thumbs up if your orange is dry and give me a thumbs down if it's wet. Okay, some thumbs down, a bit of a wobble in between, a thumbs up, a thumbs up. Okay, we've got some very down, very down going on there. So okay, so in that case we're going to leave that for now and we'll come back to it. We'll give it a little bit of time to dry off. So in that case, what we're going to do is we're going to put in our trees on either side. So that will give this a little bit more time to dry off and we can come back to it when it's ready. So for this, we're going to use some black and we're going to use quite a thin brush and we are going to come up and we are going to create these trees. So when you're painting trees, you want your trunk to be thicker, and as it goes up, it's going to get thinner. And every time a branch comes off, that's going to get thinner as well. So there's a couple of really good tips for painting trees. So one is to use a brush that is thinner than the one that you, like the thickness that you want your trunk or your branches to be. And the other thing is to use paint that's a little bit wetter. So I'm going to add a bit more paint water to my black paint. I'm going to get it, I don't want it so runny that if I hold up my palette it will run like it's water. Just want it to be a little bit kind of wetter and a bit more fluid so that it will paint easier. If you have got one of those lining brushes, which is the brush with the extra long bristles, that's what this is for painting things like this. If you haven't got one of those, still go with a normal thin round brush. And what I'm going to do, so you want to make sure you come into your orange a bit. I'm going to press down hard at the bottom, and I'm going to start to paint a bit of a wobbly line. Because I've used a bit more water in my paint, it will actually spread a bit further and you can get more of your tree done. And then I'm going to carry back on. So as I get further up, I'm pressing more and more lightly on my brush. And that means that my line gets thinner. So then where I've got my wobbles is where I'm going to take my branches. So every time I've had a bit of a wobble in my line, this is where I'm going to put my main branches coming off. So that's kind of the starting point for our tree. And then it's up to you. If you've got a really, really tiny brush and you want to do your branches with the tiny brush, then I would definitely recommend you do that. And I'm just doing these little lines coming off of my main branch. We're doing a very simplified tree, so not loads and loads of branches, just a few. We're going to have loads of trees on, so we don't, we're going to have loads. I can't speak today. We're going to have loads of leaves, so we don't need masses and masses of branches on there. And then I'm going to switch over and do the one on the right hand side. So is everyone okay? Does anyone need me to recap anything? No? All good? Okay. So I'm going to do that all over again. So I'm going to come down into my orange to start off with. I'm going to paint my line going up. I'm going to put some little wiggles in it, not sort of big wide ones, just subtle little ones. And what I want to do is not make this identical to the tree on the other side. So I'm going to make one taller than the other, and I'm going to have different branches coming up off of my tree. So I get the basic ones in first, just like that, and then I go back either with my thinner brush or make sure I scrape all the extra paint off of the one I've been using. And I just put in the rest of my branches. So there we go. Once we've done that, we're going to keep our thin brush, and we're going to use it again in a minute. Oh, awesome. That looks fantastic. Good job. Fantastic job. We're going to put in our fence next. So this is going to see how steady your hands are. But if it's all wobbly, it doesn't matter, because this is a bit of a haunted house. So our fence It doesn't matter if it's crooked. Oh, that looks fantastic. Very spooky trees. So we're going to use our fine brush again. Again, you might need to add a little bit more water to it, and we're going to just do some lines. Don't do them too close together. And we're just going to put in our fence. You can go all the way across. We are going to obviously have a house in the way in a minute, but it doesn't matter. We can put our fence in. So nice big gaps in between. And then you can either do one or you can do two. If you are worried about having like a bit of a wobble, what I would recommend doing is, so you join these up and then you can do like a broken one down here. So see, I've put a broken fence in there, or you can just paint each individual one like that, all kind of wobbly and broken. So I'm going to do a couple of good ones. These are going to be covered by my house, so I'm not too worried about these ones. And then again, some more wobbly ones. I've seen a lot of fences around where I live that look at this wobbly, and I live out in the countryside, so there we go. We got one very wobbly fence. If you've got a lovely, like, you can do straight lines and you've got a really steady hand, you can do that all in one go and not have to worry about it all being broken and wobbly like that. And then I'll give my, oh, fantastic. Good job. Oh, that looks awesome. Good fence painting. So again, give me a little thumbs up when you've done that and you're ready to move on. Excellent. Awesome. So I'm going to ask again, is your orange looking a bit drier now? Oh, my stomach's rumbling. Is that an orange? Your orange is dry now. Excellent. Okay, so I know it's a lot of back and forwards, but you have to kind of wait for bits to dry and then come down. So we know our house is going to come here in the middle. So we are going to put in our path. So that's got time to dry for us to put our cat on. So any of the greys that you've got left over from the sky or the clouds, or if you want to mix your own one, just keep in mind that you've got to put your black cat on, so you don't want it to go too dark. We're going to do this arched pathway here. So it's going to curve, it's going to come in straight and then curve up and come up to kind of the point. So where you want the corner of your house to be. So if your house is going to go here, you want your path to curve round and down. So I'm going to use another flat square brush. If any of your orange isn't perfectly dry, and when you're painting this, you pick it up. The best thing to do, rather than trying to blend the two colours in, is to actually just stop, give your brush a wipe out and then reload it with paint. So we want to create, again, a bit of perspective into this. So we're going to have our path thicker and wider here, and then as it comes around and gets closer to the house, then it can get thinner. I tend to find when I'm doing shapes like this, it's a good idea for me to give myself a stop and a start. So I've given myself, I know where I want it to end up and I know where I want it to start. So it just is really helpful. Otherwise you can kind of get all a bit carried away. So I've got a thin line that's going to start to get thicker as it comes round. Yeah, you can get a bit kind of carried away and suddenly realise that you're halfway to Australia with your line before you actually get there, and you can't get it to come back round and meet. So you can see I've got one line in there, and then I'm going to come back over here just where that curve starts to straighten out, and I'm going to put in a second brush stroke. So you can see it's thinner up here and then it gets wider as it comes down. And there we go. And then I'm just going to smarten up the edge a little bit. So I need to, it's gone a bit thin there, so I'm just going to fatten that bit up a bit. So well, we've got our grey on our brush as well. We can put our tombstones on. So I've put mine down here, but you can put some in other places in your garden. You just need to leave a little bit of an area there for your cat. So you can do some using the same grey as you've used in the path. You can pop one in there. You can change the grey as well. You can make it a bit darker or a bit lighter if you want to have a kind of a bit of difference between the colours. So I'm going to pop one there. So I've got, it's basically an oval shape that's been cut in half and the bottom is square, or straight, should I say. So I've got two there, and I'm going to actually take a little bit of white. I'm going to make a paler one, and I'm going to put it over here, I think quite near the house. So changing it up a bit from my original painting. So I've got that square. You might find it easier to paint a rectangle like this and then just curve the top. So generally when you're painting, people put things in threes because threes just seem to look a bit nicer on the eye and a bit more kind of pleasant and stuff. Again, give me a thumbs up when you've done that. Cool. God, you're quick today, Lana. Fantastic. Good job. So I think the next step is to get our spooky house in. Ooh. So when you guys are ready for the next step, we're going to use just some black paint, and what you want ideally is one of those flat brushes that we were using earlier, one with that's kind of squared off. It's not the end of the world if you don't have one of those. The only reason I'm saying this is because you get nice sharp edges and it just makes it a bit easier to do. So that's not a problem at all if you haven't got one. The best way to do any kind of complicated shape is to break it down into really basic shapes first of all, and then add the detail afterwards. So I can see, if I look at my house, I've got this big rectangular shape here with, so I'm not including the roofs at the moment, another rectangle here and kind of another one there and another one there. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to add a little bit more water to my paint, black paint again. And I'm going to start off with going from where my path is. I'm going to come across my orange hill. And I'm going to pop in my big rectangle to start off with. So you can change this up. You don't have to copy my house at all. I'm just going to change mine as I go. So mine won't be exactly the same as my original, but I do like the way that I've done some of the roofs and things like that. So that I'm going to keep it similar, but not exactly the same. I'm just going to block in all of my black. So again, just like with the other things in this painting, don't swamp this with loads and loads of paint, because we've still got to paint our windows on, and we need it to dry, which it won't if you've got loads and loads of black paint still waiting to dry. I'm going to pop another rectangle on top like this. So when we were tiny little kids and we used to draw our houses that were a square with a rectangle on top for the roof, that was actually a really good way of drawing, because we break everything down into our most basic shapes and then put the details in. So unfortunately we kind of lose that skill sometimes. I'm then going to start to put roofs and things on. So when you're working anything like this that's in silhouette or practically in silhouette, the important thing is to simplify everything, to make it so that it's really easy to understand what anything is. So if I put a bit of a roof on there, it needs to be really obvious that that is what it is. So so for example, if you were doing a silhouette of a horse and it started to kind of, you were putting all four legs in and you just couldn't make out what was happening and what they were, it's actually better to just put, say, 3 legs or 2 legs in, because people who are looking at your painting, their brains will fill the rest in themselves if it's really obvious what it is. So I can put a little kind of extra bit on the side. I can put a little bit of a triangle on top of that, and that becomes a roof. The same up here. So, but you can see I'm starting to, even though I'm keeping it quite simple, I'm starting to add different details on. So I can then leave a nice big gap and pop on a chimney. I can do another chimney up here. So that's going to come straight up. This is a bit of a bigger one, but then I can put a bit of, like, another bit of roof next to it and stuff like that. So it's starting to get all a bit kind of shape and details to it after I've started to get my basic shapes in. So I can put a bit of a tower up here, particularly if you can get it to go in front of your moon. That would look really good. And I'm going to put a roof on top of my tower. So this little kind of roof, you can put like a little bit of a crooked chimney and stuff like that on there if you want. A bit broken, you could put a flagpole up there. Anything like that really would work. So I need to put a roof on this bit as well. So a lot of Gothic houses had railings on the roof as well. So you can, if you wanted to, just put, so I'm just dabbing the tip very gently like this. So you can see I'm putting some railings in like that. You could put in a bit of a flagpole like that. You can put in, just by dabbing, you could put in your little chimney stacks. You can put in a little triangular one. All sorts of stuff like that. So by using this little flat brush and not having loads of paint on it, you can get nice sharp little triangle corners to your roof. How's it going, guys? Is it looking good so far? Yeah? Ah, awesome, fantastic. We're going to keep with the black and we're going to do a couple of little arrivals for our party next. So we've got our cat and we've got a little bat up here as well. Because why, if you're a bat and you could fly, why would you walk? So we're going to pop those in next when you guys are ready to move on. Oh, wow, that looks awesome. Fantastic job. So are you guys all ready to move on? And we do our cat and our bat next, yeah? Yeah, fantastic. So if you're still doing your house, carry on with your house. And if you're ready to move on, we're going to do our cat and our bat. We're going to switch over to our small brushes again. So particularly with the bat, you want as small a brush as you can. And I'll do the bat first, and then because the cat's a little bit more complicated. So just using a little bit of black paint and a small brush, we're going to pop our bat in. So my bat if I put it in the same spot as I did in my original, it's going to be a bit close to the leaves on my tree. So I'm going to bring it up and have it over here, just above the house. So make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. And what we're going to do for our bat is we're going to paint a little, basically a smile shape, just like that. So can you guys see that okay? Let me go to speaker view. Yeah. So let me turn this round again for a minute and see if that helps. Don't know why it does. There you go. You can see a bit better for a moment. So we're going to do this. Basically, it's a smile in the middle of the sky. In the middle of our smile, we're going to put a bit of a dot above it. And below it, we're going to put a little bit of like a line. So that's our head and our body of our bat's wings. And then all we do is go down either side, a little line. Remember, this is in silhouette, so we want to simplify it. We're going to just do a couple of little arches on either side, making sure there's plenty of room between the body and the arch of the wing, and then fill it in. And you've got a bat. So I did a painting of a bat. I've been doing lots of Halloween ones, and he had 2 big ears. So I now like my bats with big ears. So that is, I'm going to add those on. So that is definitely one flying bat. There we go. So I'll pop that back round. Give me a thumbs up again when you've done that. Yeah. And we're ready to move on to the cat. So our cat, just like our house, he or she breaks down into really simple shapes. And so it's just, art is just getting used to being able to spot what those simple shapes are. So first thing we want to do is our cat's body, which is going to be a long rectangle. So we're going to go above our path, and we're going to do a long rectangle, which is probably about twice as wide as it is tall. So this is our rectangle here. If you're doing something like this, obviously you can draw it in pencil and get it right first, but the reason I paint it in these sessions again is because the pencil doesn't show up on the screen. Oh, fantastic. That looks really good. Really well done. Are you off, or are you gonna do some more with us? So with my cat, I'm then going to put in 4 legs. And what we have is our cat is walking. So the legs are going to be in different places. So I'm going to put one that comes down from the rectangle, one that goes kind of out and forward from the corner of the rectangle. And then back legs are a little bit different. So we're going to go out from the corner, and then we're going to go straight down. And we're going to do a similar thing with the one that comes down directly from the rectangle. So we're going to go down directly, and then we're going to go forward a bit. So this looks a bit weird, but when we start to kind of fatten up the legs and things, it'll look better. From this top right-hand corner, we're going to pop in a little twisty tail. And then in the top left-hand corner, we're going to put the head. So don't go too big with the head. What we want to do, so coming up from this left-hand corner here, is a little circle like that, with a smaller circle, much smaller circle on the side of it like that. Thanks, Eve. I'll be sending out the recording anyway, so if you want to finish up, then you can do. And also, I don't know whether you guys are on Facebook, but we have a Facebook group where everyone puts their pictures up for like feedback and everything afterwards. So have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you another time, hopefully. Bye. So on our cat, we've got our larger circle, our smaller circle. We're going to join those on to our rectangle, starting to look a little bit more cat-like. And then, like I was saying before, we know that cats have got 2 ears, but if we put both of them in, it's going to start to look a bit cluttered and confusing. So this is our cat. We're going to block this all in, so you can pop in all of the body like this. You can fatten up the tail a bit if you need to, particularly up near the body. The cat's tails are a little bit, a very little bit thicker. We can start to curve our sharp angles as well. And then for our legs, we want those to be ever so slightly, it's very subtle, fatter up near the body. They're going to come down and become thin, and then we've got like a, almost like a little musical note paw on the end of each of these. And the same with our back one, so just a little kind of splodge of our brush. And then, although they are thicker near the body, they're actually, those back leg muscles are much stronger, so those legs are actually much wider as they come up near the body. So there we go, that's our cat. And you can just do any little tweaks and fatten any bits up, but that is basically it for our cat until we come back and put our necklace on. If you want to, while you've got some black on your brush, any of your tombstones, if you want your writing to be in black, or you want to put a cross on or anything like that, you can do that because you're using the right paint at the moment and the right brush. So you can put crosses, RIP. You can actually have some crosses in there as well if you want, rather than having to use the tombstones. Give my brush a good clean out again. Fantastic, looking good. So my next question to you guys is going to be, are your houses still wet or have they dried off? Black tends to dry quite quickly. So there's a thumbs down, a not sure, thumbs down, 1 thumbs up, and lots of thumbs down. So what we're going to do, we're going to, just like before, we're going to switch over to something else, leave that to dry for a bit more. We're going to put some leaves on these trees because Halloween, there's still some leaves on our trees. It's still kind of, they're all these reds and orange colours. And we've got reds and orange left over from earlier. So we can use those and we can pop on some of our leaves. So I'm going to use the reds and the oranges. I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow, but like I was saying before, yellow can tend to be a little bit grumpy and not want to kind of cover the other colours. So we'll use a little bit of that, but we will need yellow for our windows. So again, you can use whatever brush you've got. If you've got a small round one, you can use that. If you've got a flat square one, you can use that. And what we're going to do, using our reds and our oranges from earlier, I'm just going to take my brush, rather than trying to paint a leaf shape, I'm just going to dab my brush like this, and you get more of a leaf shape. So I'll do some down here so you guys can see. I'm going to do a mixture of them in between the branches, some on the branches. I'm going to change up the colours. So I'm going to do my pale orange to start off with. So I've not added any water, so this paint's quite thick. So you'll get a nice kind of leaf shape when you press down. And this does work, just the pressing down with whatever shape pretty much you're using. I'm going to switch over to my darker orange now, and I'm going to put some leaves in. So you can leave yourself sort of gap in between things on the leaves on the trees, because this time of year the trees are starting to lose their leaves and you start to see a lot more of the branches. So I'm doing ones inside as well as kind of outside. So not just around the outside of the tree, I'm doing some on the inside as well. And then I'm going to give that brush a bit of a wipe out, and then I'm going to do some just in the red. So we've ended up with some nice sort of variation in the colour of our leaves. Very autumnal. Oh, let's flip. Oh, fantastic. Your house looks like a big spooky tower. Those look really good. When you've done that, give me another thumbs up. Excellent. We'll wait for a couple more thumbs up and then we'll move on. Yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to switch over to a bit of yellow, not yellow, sorry, we're going to use some white. We're going to pop in our ghost over here, and also any more if you want white writing on your tombstones. We're going to pop in our collar. Fantastic. We're going to pop in the collar on our cat, and then we're going to use our white for a cobweb up here, and we're going to mix it with some yellow and put in our windows. So by adding the white and the yellow together, it will help it to sit over the top of our black. So first of all, we're going to start off with some white. We are going to do, so I've done this ghost kind of coming out from one of the tombstones. So you can pop this ghost anywhere you like on your painting. And I'm just going to do a long line. It's going to come across the tombstone. It's going to come up in a bit of a wobble. So this is long and thin until we get up to the top, and then it's going to have a kind of bulbous shape at the top. So you can do more than one if you want. I could do one over here too. I think that's quite a good. They're all coming out. All the spirits are coming out to join in the party. And I'm just going to pop those in the white there. My one tombstone that's not got a ghost, I think they're obviously kind of like the trendy one who'd always late for the party. So I'm going to pop another cross on that one in white. Using my thin brush still, I'm going to pop, you can pop some cobwebs on your house. So just a few little thin lines and just some curved lines that go in between like that. You can do more than one if you want to. So it's quite good to put them in between things. So like here. You can put another one up there and they scoop in. I'm going to, with the white as well, so my cat's got a pearl necklace on, so I'm just going to do some little white ones. You could put a bow tie on there if your cat is a boy cat and he's all smart rather than having his best jewels on. And then all that's left to do, I say all that's left to do, but this is the kind of cool bit, is to pop in our windows. So we're going to use yellow and white. We're going to get in the basic shape of our window, and then we're going to paint the details in afterwards. So what I'll do, you guys carry on if you're still doing that. I'm going to go back to make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to use my flat square brush again, if we've got one, not the end of the world if we don't. I'm going to mix up probably half white and half yellow. And the thing that we don't want to do with this is put masses of paint on. Just, this is definitely better to do it so that you have a light layer and then you come back and put a second one on. So for example, you might want a round window up here in the top. So if any of your black is still a bit wet and you pick the colour up, just like before, don't try and blend it. It's much better to, my brush is a bit hard for that bit, it's much better to kind of let it, give your brush a wipe out and start again with your colour, particularly because the black will just swamp the yellow. So I can put two, is kind of a bit like eyes almost here. I'm not worried about them being perfect because I'm going to come back and tidy those up with my black afterwards. So I'm going to then come back and do some squares. Like this. So I'll get a good rectangle in there. So you can see the black is showing through on mine. And I'm just going to come back and put a second coat on afterwards. I'm going to come over here and put a big window in this one. So I'm painting out my rectangle first. Get that blocked in. And then I can put some other shapes in as well. So another big one down here. You don't have to keep these yellow either. You can change the colours up a bit if you want. You could have just white. You could have more of a sort of reddy orange colour as well. Those would all work really well on these. I'm going to put an arched window in here. So I'm going to put in a rectangle to start off with, just like with our tombstones, and then put an arch in the top. And then you can put some sort of kind of like narrow ones in as well. So once you've got the basic shapes of your windows in and you're happy with them, they don't all have to be really bright. Some can be a bit dark. What we do, we're going to leave those for a minute to dry off. If you want to put any of your leaves in yellow, you can do that now while we've got our yellow paint. So, but like I said, I wouldn't put too many in because the yellow paint doesn't like it, and you'll see that they just go all a bit kind of grey green. But a few, the odd one here and there, particularly if you overlap one you've already done, will be okay. Okay. I'm going to go back to my fine brush and my black paint just for the last bits. So using my black paint, I'm going to do two little eyes. You can put just eyes or eyes and a mouth on your ghosts. Just like a O looks really good. And then with your black paint, what you can do now is go around all of the things like your windows. If you're doing the recording, it's obviously much better to wait for them to be perfectly dry. So that's a good job to get the hair dryer out and things like that for this point. I'm going to just tidy up any ones that need tidying up, and then I can start to put some of my details in. So I can put in things like a cross through some of the windows. You've done curtains on yours. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing that then. You can definitely put curtains on. I'm going to put a couple of lines through my little arched windows, like that. And with the bigger ones, you can start to put the silhouettes of things. Oh, that looks great. Really good. So I can put kind of like a little werewolf in this one. So I'm just going to looks almost like a bit of a dinosaur in the side really. So I'm going to start off with like a little kind of curve shape. And then I'm going to put this little body and then 2 ears, and that's my werewolf. You can always, if you've got a really small brush, you can put some teeth in. So this one here, I'm going to put a man-eating plant. So again, I'm going to put that, it's almost like a horseshoe shape, like that. And then I can put a bit of a kind of wibbly stalk coming from that. I can blob in 2 little leaf shapes. And then the important thing with a man-eating plant is obviously going to be his big sharp teeth. So I'm going to put some zigzag teeth in there like that. Yeah, I don't want to be at this party at all. I don't think I would get out alive. And you can do a little cat in one of the windows. I'll put him here. So this is obviously the friend of our cat that's arriving at the party. So I'm going to put a little oval. I'm going to do a little narrow triangle that goes up to it. 2 little tiny triangles off of the head, and then just Kieran, I'm really glad you guys enjoyed it, and yes, I really hope that you come and join another class. And we've got loads on this week, and also loads of recordings on our web store. So I will put the links to everything on when I send out the recording, so that you guys can see. Yeah, and we normally do a group shot, but if you guys have got to go, I understand. So yeah, we can put in some more window frames as well. Thank you, Wendy. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And like I said, if you're on Facebook and would like to post a picture on the Facebook group, we're very positive and we always give lots of lovely good feedback. So we would love to see how you guys have got on. So I'm going to put a couple of bars across this window. We don't want this scary cat coming out. Some through this window here. If you want to do a witch and a skeleton, like I've done here, so this one, the witch is just like the cat, it's a circle on top of a very tall triangle, but this time we're going to put a little line above the head and then a little triangle on top of that. So if you've got enough room to go really detailed, you can do it holding a bit of a broom. So our witch's broom is just basically a stick with a triangle on. And then if you really got enough room, you can do a skeleton. A skeleton's quite easy. So we want, in the middle of it, we're going to have a line. We're going to have 2 dots either side of the line, and then we can do a little leg that comes out there. We're going to do a line that comes from the top to the middle, and then another bent one like this with a bit of a blob on the end. We're going to do a circle underneath those arms with some lines going across for the ribs. We're going to do a little line coming up. Our skeleton's skull is basically a number 8 on its side, so we've got some eye holes. We round off the top, and then we put another little circle underneath. So I'm going to put some bars on this window as well. And there we have it. So I do normally try and get a group shot with everyone, But if some of you haven't finished and some of you need to go, I can do that in a second. I'm going to stop the recording there, and I'm going to go to each of you individually now and see how everyone's got on. But if you have been painting with me today and doing the recording, we've got lots more Halloween sessions, and I'll attach the links so you can find them. And thank you for painting with me.